They tried to give it a cheerful cover so people wouldn't notice it was about Russian literature. And the part I'm reading from is called Who Killed Tolstoy? The International Tolstoy Conference lasts 4 days and is held on the grounds of Yasnaya Polyana, the estate where Tolstoy was born, lived most of his life, wrote War and Peace and Anna Karenina, and is buried. In the summer after my 4th year of graduate school, I gave a talk at this conference. At the time, my department awarded 2 kinds of international travel grants, $1,000 for presenting a conference paper or $2,500 for field research. My needs clearly fell into the first category, but with an extra $1,500 on the line, I decided to have a go at writing a field research proposal. Surely there was some mystery that could only be solved at Tolstoy's house. Quote, Tolstoy died in November 1910 at the provincial train station of Ostapova under what can only be described as strange circumstances, I typed. The strangeness of these circumstances was immediately assimilated into the broader context of Tolstoy's life and work. After all, had anyone really expected the author of The Death of Ivan Ilyich to drop dead quietly in some dark corner? And so a death was taken for granted that in fact merited closer examination. I was rather pleased by my proposal, which I titled, Did Tolstoy Die of Natural Causes, or Was He Murdered? A forensic investigation, which included a historical survey of individuals who had motive and opportunity to effect Tolstoy's death. Quote, Arguably Russia's most controversial public figure, Tolstoy was not without powerful enemies. More letters threatening my life, he noted in 1897, when his defense of the Dukhabor sect drew loud protests from the Orthodox Church and Tsar Nikolai, who had Tolstoy followed by the secret police. As is often the case, Tolstoy's enemies were no more alarming than his so-called friends. Meanwhile, within the family circle, Tolstoy's will was the subject of bitter contention. You were certainly my most entertaining student, said my advisor when I told her about my theory. Tolstoy murdered. Ha, ha, ha. The man was 82 years old with a history of stroke. That's exactly what would make it the perfect crime, I explained patiently. The department was not convinced. They did, however, give me the $1,000 grant to present my paper. On the day of my flight to Moscow, I was late to the airport. Check-in was already closed. Although I was eventually let onto the plane, my suitcase was not, and it subsequently vanished altogether from the Aeroflot informational system. Air travel is like death. Everything is taken from you. Because there are no clothing stores in Yasnaya Polyana, I was obliged to wear, for 4 days of the conference, the same clothes in which I had traveled. Flip-flops, sweatpants, and a flannel shirt. This is actually not a novel, it's all true. Every morning I called Aeroflot to ask about my suitcase. Oh, it's you, sighed the clerk. Yes, I have your request right here. Address, Yasnaya Polyana, Tolstoy's house. When we find the suitcase, we will send it to you. In the meantime, are you familiar with our Russian phrase, resignation of the soul? On the first morning of talks, a Malevich scholar read a paper about Tolstoy's iconoclasm and Malevich's red rectangle. He said that Nikolai Rostov was the red rectangle. For the whole rest of the day, he sat with his head buried in his hands in a posture of tremendous suffering. Next, an enormous Russian textologist in an enormous gray dress expounded at great length upon a new study of early variants of War and Peace. Fixing her eyes in the middle distance, consulting no notes, she chanted in a half-pleading, half-declaratory tone, like somebody proposing an hour-long toast.